I, 20 female, have a brother Jake, 31. Jake has a girlfriend, Macy, 28, and they have a baby girl. Since Macy gave birth, she's lived with my mum and me. She has a lot of health issues that were amplified by pregnancy and labour, so we've been taking care of her. Jake still lives in their apartment on his own and comes over every so often. He's putting his all into work right now to progress his career. From what I can tell, he's already doing quite well and they're not financially struggling. He owns their apartment and can afford to give them most of the things they desire, but he says he isn't yet where he wants to be with his career. Meanwhile, Macy is depressed and struggling physically too. She's on several medications and she barely leaves the house. My mom and I do 90% of the childcare because Macy isn't in the state to be doing much, although she tries her best and feels very guilty for how much we've had to do to take care of my niece. My mum and I are happy to help and Macy is like a sister to me now. We're willing to do anything for her. But seeing her so lonely and unhappy is heartbreaking. My brother came over last night to see his daughter for literally 20 minutes, and then he stood up to leave. I followed him out and asked where he always was and why he wasn't here with his wife, who was clearly struggling and taking care of his daughter. He said he works hard and is too tired to come all the way over here after work every day, so he just comes when he can. Bear in mind, it's a 30-minute drive from their apartment to my mum's house. I said one day his daughter won't even recognize him, and neither will his wife because he doesn't try to be here. He said it isn't my business, and if I'm unhappy helping them with the baby, then I should just stop and that no one is forcing me. I said I wasn't unhappy taking care of my niece, but it's heartbreaking seeing his girlfriend alone in that state and him not being there for her or their daughter. I said he comes to see them probably once a week for 20 minutes, and it's not good enough unless he's the freaking president of this nation and doesn't have any time at all, but he's not. He works a 9 to 5, so it's not like he's busier than the regular person. I said he should have been smarter and not have had a child if he wanted to put his career over his family, because now he isn't much of a father. He said he isn't taking advice on how to be a father from a kid who has no clue anything she's talking about, and that none of this is my business, so I should keep my 2 cents to myself from now on. I said I don't have to be older or a parent to know he's a useless father and that his wife and daughter are incredibly unlucky to have a loser like him. I walked into the house before he could respond. I know I was mean, but I don't really regret it, and I don't think it was unwarranted. But my mum said although I was right, I took it too far and may have pushed my brother away. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. How is it none of your business? You're literally living in the middle of it. It doesn't sound like your brother wants the baby or his girlfriend. All you did was, very appropriately, call that out. I wonder if there are some things going on in their relationship that he hasn't disclosed to you. It's extremely suspicious that your sister-in-law has effectively moved out of their apartment and he hasn't. Thank you for advocating for your vulnerable sister-in-law and niece. I honestly think their relationship is doomed. OP is right. His daughter is going to only consider him a sperm donor, not a father. I read this wondering why he doesn't stay the night once in a while or pick them up to stay at his apartment. He's acting single is what he's doing. They're living as if he's a nearly absent baby daddy, paying child support. Agreed. When I got near the end and read that he's only working a 9 to 5, my jaw dropped. I'll be honest, a 30-minute drive twice a day can really put some wear and tear on a vehicle and cost a lot on gas, but to stay for only 20 minutes and to only visit once a week, that's deadbeat behaviour. He needs a reality check. He clearly doesn't want to be around any of you and wants to blame it on his piddly 9 to 5. Your brother is a deadbeat. Who wants to bet that bro will soon, or already, have a new girlfriend? Yep, he's got another family. I wonder if his girlfriend knows. This so super sounds like your sister-in-law is the side piece. 20 minutes a week and she's okay with that? 20 minutes a day is neglect, for gosh sake. It's time for his girlfriend to take him to court for child support. Hit him where it hurts. I'm 27 female mixed, and if I had $1 for every time someone asked about my ethnic background, I'd be a very rich lady. Normally, when someone asks me where I'm from, I just tell them the general area I reside in. However, oftentimes their question is inevitably followed up with, but like, where are you really from? I work in a field where I luckily don't have to interact with others much, but occasionally, my boss insists I join him for lunch with some hotshot client. So the other day I had a semi-formal lunch with him and one of our biggest clients this year, a very important person who brings the company a lot of money. At one point, the client asks me where I'm from. I tell him what area I currently live in. Of course, he asks me again where I'm really from. I tell him I was born in this country. Then he said, "My exotic looks tell a far more interesting story." I honestly couldn't believe my ears. I decided to troll and told him that my mom gave birth to me on a roller coaster and that my life has been going up and down ever since. I added that getting asked where I'm really from is always a low point. My boss intervened very quickly and apologized to the client on my behalf. He said that I didn't mean it, and I said that I definitely did mean it. Surprisingly, the client laughed and apologized to me. The rest of the lunch went fine. Afterward, I had a chat with my boss, who said that my behavior was incredibly unprofessional, rude, and shockingly childish. He said that I not only embarrassed him, but the company at large. I honestly didn't care for the conversation and simply replied that I have the right to answer stupid questions like that how I see fit. He said that we all have to say or do things we don't like to keep the peace, and that it was simply a compliment. He also said I'm lucky that I left a good impression on the client, otherwise he would have taken further action. Am I the idiot here? I work in a field where I luckily don't have to interact with others much, but occasionally my boss insists I join him for lunch with some hotshot client. This is the first thing I noticed in your story. Why does your boss insist you join him occasionally when the client is a hotshot? Unless you're hot and your boss wants to just show up with eye candy, that would explain the exotic question. Yeah, I'd bet money this is the answer, and the real idiot here is the boss for putting OP in that situation. The exotic question was peak cringe, but it definitely would have been wiser to take it on the chin. It sounds like the client took your response with good humor, so I presume he was asking with insensitivity but not with malice. You are totally justified for poking back, but your boss doesn't have your back, and it is the problem. It sounds like he's one of those guys who would let a client take a dump on him for a juicy commission. Well, OP, you have the right to answer that question in any way you want. Your boss has the right to fire you if you cost him a client. Sometimes standing your ground is worth the cost, and you get to decide when that is. You are the idiot, but now you won't have to bother going on any of these client lunches anymore. My sister Madison was bullied in school, her worst bully being James. James bullied her a lot over her looks, and Madison did have some mental health and self-esteem struggles because of him. Madison and James never saw each other again after graduation. Madison was recently looking up the names of old classmates, which is how she learned that James actually died last year. James's daughter Ashley posted on his birthday that she misses him daily, but also knows he's in heaven watching over her. Madison sent a direct message to Ashley, telling her that James wasn't the person Ashley thought she was, and gave examples of some of the things James would say to her. Madison went even further by ending it with how she would bet money that James isn't in heaven. Ashley posted screenshots of Madison's messages, getting a lot of attention online. People are leaving comments on Madison's page calling her a horrible person, and she claims that many people unfriended her online. Madison knows some of the people who saw the posts in real life. I don't think it's likely, but Madison is still afraid that this could reflect badly on her at work and possibly impact her ability to get a promotion if her supervisors find out. Madison admits she was angry and didn't think before messaging Ashley, but that it was still justified and she shouldn't have to bite her tongue because James dying doesn't change how he treated her in school. I told Madison that she was to blame for the aforementioned issues and should apologize to Ashley. I agree you don't need to lie that someone was a great person, even if they've died. But what did she think messaging a grieving kid those things would accomplish? Madison told me she may have done something reckless in a moment out of anger, but I'm a terrible sister for not having her back. Our dad is defending Madison because it took years for her to regain her self-esteem because of how people like James treated her in school. Dad says Ashley is young, but she's the same age as Madison was when James was making the comments he did towards her, and eventually she'd have to learn some hard truths about who her parents were. Looking back, our mom said it's obvious that Madison responded poorly, but it was done in a moment of anger when she wasn't thinking. Mom insists that everyone would have moved on from it if it hadn't happened online, and this kind of blowback to Madison isn't justified. Our parents both told me that I'm the one who owes an apology to Madison because everyone has gone too far in moments of anger, and Madison doesn't deserve this kind of stress. They told me a good sister would have had compassion instead of judgment. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. It doesn't matter how terrible your life has been, you don't have the right to take your anger out on completely innocent people. I'd go so far as to say Madison became a bully when she did that, And if your parents try to excuse her pain, tell them that the vast majority of bullies were acting out because of pain and anger, and that doesn't change the fact that they are bullies. Yeah, like, I feel for Madison, I do. I had some intense bullies in high school, so I still hold a grudge over it even many years later. But you know what I would never do? Rake their grieving children over the coals of their long-dead sins. What sort of closure could I possibly gain by bullying a child for the heck of it when their dad did at least their whole lifetime ago? Madison could have ignored the post as no one asked her for help on funeral expenses or anything like a scholarship to honor him. Or, even though I don't think she had to, Madison could have said something general like, "I hope he turned his life around and found peace." She didn't have to tell the full truth, unprompted, about someone no longer alive to defend themselves to a grieving family member, and when no one was asked to give or donate. It's just wild that Madison was bullied but still decided it would be okay to bully a child as an adult. Not the idiot. You're the only sane one in your family. I, 28 female, am engaged to my fiancé Dave, 28 male. This week I went to my hometown and invited him to come with me so he could meet my family. He's met my brothers and mom, but not my dad and extended family. When I was 16, my dad cheated on my mom with a very well-known escort and then married her. Not only was I going through a tough time dealing with our family being torn apart, but I also had to deal with all the ridicule of having an escort stepmom. People weren't as open with her work back then, and it was a nightmare for me when people found out, especially since my stepmom was very vocal and confident about her work. I changed schools in my senior year because I couldn't handle everyone making fun of me because my dad and stepmom. My older brother got suspended once because another kid joked about hiring our stepmom for a good time, and they got into a big fight. I stayed with my mom full-time and barely spoke to my dad or stepmom. My dad wanted equal custody of me and my brothers. They were 17 and 14 years old at the time, but none of us wanted to live with him and his wife, and he couldn't really force us to split our time for him. He also gave up making an effort to see us at all when we said we didn't want to live with him half the time, so we barely saw him. When I finished high school, I left our hometown and moved to a big city for college. My brothers also moved there, and our mom would come to visit us all the time, so I didn't bother going back to our hometown. Dad didn't offer to see us, and none of us had been back home, so this week was the first time I've seen my dad in about 10 years. My auntie was hosting a dinner party so everyone could meet my fiancé, and of course my dad and stepmom were there. I was polite to them, but it was awkward and my fiancé was doing all the talking. Stepmom asked us when and where the wedding was, and my fiancé told her, "It's on the 2nd of December. She said, "Wow, and you still haven't sent out invites?" My fiancé looked at me awkwardly and I answered, "We have sent out invites, but our guest list is limited and we're only inviting our closest friends and family, so I couldn't make space for you and Dad. I'm sorry, we aren't inviting anyone we aren't super close to. We'll be having 30 guests in total." She just smiled and said she understood. The next day, my dad visited my fiancé and me at our Airbnb, and he asked me why he and his wife weren't invited to our wedding. He said, "I'm his only daughter and he'll feel like a failure if he can't walk me down the aisle." I said, "It makes me sad that my dad won't walk me down the aisle either, but I'm not going to make a fuss about that tradition when we've barely spoken since I was 16. We don't have a father-daughter relationship, and I won't pretend like we do just for my wedding." He started crying and asked how long I planned to punish him for what happened between him and my mom. He said he feels like he lost his children 12 years ago when he divorced my mom, and now I'm putting the final nail in the coffin. I told him I don't hold resentment over his divorce from my mom and everything he did, but the fact of the matter is we aren't close anymore and I'm not interested in faking it. Am I the idiot? Not the idiot. Your dad is feeling like a failure because he is a failure of a dad. The audacity of people. I can't believe he broke up your family like that, hooking up with an escort and expecting you to have him walk you down the aisle like some kind of upstanding father. Ridiculous. Even if you overlook the cheating, breaking the family apart and all the bullying endured, he stopped trying to make amends. It was on him to come to his children, but it probably just became easier on his pride to give up. Well, he won't have to worry about that much attention. He's not even invited to the wedding. Also, it didn't seem that the public attention and shame were that big a deal for him the first time. Certainly not for his wife, who seemed to flaunt her vocation. No, the ones who suffered, as usual, were his kids. Hope he has been through enough with this couple. Here's hoping she and her fiancé have a wonderful life together. No, it's not about public attention at all. He had fantasies that he still had a relationship with his daughter, and that bubble just burst. The full consequences of his decisions just crashed down on him. OP, you handled it perfectly, honestly. There's a vast spectrum between resentment and a healthy relationship, and your dad doesn't get to guilt you into a relationship that doesn't exist. Don't let the consequences he's now fully realizing weigh on you. My parents are immigrants from India who lived in the US for 20 plus years. For some background info, India was colonized by the British for a long time, and that, in combination with various mutually unintelligible languages, led to English being widely taught in schools and spoken. My parents, typically educated people, are fluent in English. She and I met at a company event for the company she and my parents work at, so she's well aware of where my parents work. Anyhow, my girlfriend is planning to meet my parents soon and asked if I would translate between her and them. I asked what she meant, and she said she assumed they didn't speak English. I pointed out, even notwithstanding the region's history, my parents have lived here for longer than she or I have been alive and work white-collar corporate jobs, so it's common sense to realize they speak English perfectly well. She said she didn't realize, and this annoyed me a bit. She said it's unfair of me to be annoyed about an honest mistake, but I think it's a fair thing to be annoyed about. Am I the idiot here? Not the idiot. So she was clueless and/or latched onto insulting stereotypes about immigrants. If this matches larger patterns you don't like in her behavior, you can consider whether she's the kind of person you should be with. She sounds unintelligent. It's worth being annoyed about, but how much is up to you. Don't ever attribute to malice what can be attributed to ignorance. It's a dumb question and a dumb mistake for your girlfriend to have made, but it doesn't mean there's any malice in it. She's probably just nervous about meeting your folks and overthinking, which led her to tossing a bit of logic out the window. Try not to be so hard on her. You are the idiot if you continue to hold this against her, I think.